everyone, Snowflarky Zemos. I'm here today with my hand anti-meta deck profile. This is a fun deck I kind of put together after I noticed I had a complete collection of the hand cards and was looking into them a little bit, seeing some of the synergies they have with some powerful anti-meta cards, and just thought I'd put something together to have a different sort of anti-meta deck to play in a casual setting. So it's a pretty cool deck. I like be able to use the hand effects, generate advantage, and I like these synergies that they have with a lot of the cards that we're going to see in this deck profile. Do note, this isn't your typical hand trap tricks artifact type deck. While there are some trap tricks in here, this is more going straight for the pure stun anti-meta style using hands. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Firehand. Firehand, of course, is one of the 2 main hand monsters that originally came out in our Dragons of Legend series. And, of course, Firehand says, while this card in your possession is destroyed by your opponent's card by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target a monster they control, destroy that target, and then if you do, special summon an Ice Hand. So 4-star monster gives you access to some extra deck plays, which was the traditional playstyle of hands. And of course, Firehand is nice because when this card is destroyed, you are going to destroy a monster. That's pretty cool. And float into another card, a copy of Ice Hand, which is pretty sweet. And do note that this effect is not once per turn. So, you know, the Fire and Ice Hand combination allow you to really wall an opponent for a good chunk of time. Starting with our next monster, the card we're going into, 3 copies of Ice Hand. Now, Ice Hand is less flexible than Fire Hand, which we'll talk about in a second, but still pretty good. 1400 attack, which is a little less than Fire Hand. When this card you control is destroyed by your opponent's card, battle, or card effect, you can target a spell or trap card they control, destroy that target, then you can special summon a Fire Hand from your deck. So, not all decks have spell and trap cards, so it may leave your Ice Hand a little dead in the water. But, you know, even if they just have like a field spell or one, all you need is one spell or trap card on the field, destroy it, continue the floating. So, it's still pretty cool and nice to just bring off a Fire Hand anyway. So, given that the theme of this deck is hands, I'm playing all 3 regardless. Pretty cool card. Next up, the newest hand support that I think we've gotten in a while. It's a little older now, but still very cool. 3 copies of Thunderhand. Thunderhand, honestly, seeing that I had 3 holographic copies of this card was definitely something that made me put this together. But Thunderhand says if a face-up monster you control with 1600 original attack or defense is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, while this card is in your hand or graveyard, special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field, and if you do, you can destroy 1 card your opponent controls. So of course, Firehand's got 1600 attack, and Ice Hand has 1600 defense, so both these cards can trigger Thunderhand, which is pretty cool. And of course, Thunderhand itself can also trigger Thunderhand, which is pretty cool. Unless you just special summon Thunderhand back, because then it goes to the banish zone. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Just gets you an extra body on board in addition to your float. Gets you material back from the grave, and destroys a card. So that's nice. Little advantage generation is pretty nice in this, especially when the rest of our cards are really going to put our opponent, their opponent in their tracks. So, you know, it can be a rough time for them. And last in our monster lineup, I am playing 2 copy of Trap Tricks Myrmeleo. Of course, Myrmeleo is an insect type monster, level 4. Is unaffected by the effects of whole normal trap cards, and then of course when this card is normal summoned, you can add a trap whole normal trap card from your deck to your hand. We're playing a couple of those so that we can make use of Myrmeleo's ability. And of course, if this card is special summoned, you can target a spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy that target. Pretty cool special summon effect, but not one we're going to be using much in this build. We're mostly just playing Myrmeleo as a way to get a search off of our normal summon. And of course, I have a 1600 monster ready to go to trigger our Thunderhand. That is it for our monsters. Next up, we're going to take a look at our spells right here. Starting off, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance is a pretty cool card. We banished 3 to 6 random extra deck cards to draw a card for every 3 that we did. So banishing 6 extra deck cards gets us a draw 2, which is pretty nice. Now, of course, hands do have the ability to do a lot of rank 4 play, but in this build, we're mostly going to win through other means. Just are the good trap cards that synergize well with the hands. And so I'm going to be glad to take out some extra deck monsters to draw extra cards. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Given that playstyle, I'm not going to be doing a lot of special summoning on my own turn. Mostly going to wait for my opponent's turn for them to destroy my hands, and then, let me special summon on their turn. So on your turn, you don't have to special summon a lot, so I can gladly play Pot of Duality. It reveals the top 3 cards in my deck. I add 1 to my hand, shuffle the rest back in. Pretty cool. The only thing I will say about note is if it's turn 1 and you're going to set a hand, do note that Pot of Duality may spoil what kind of deck you're playing. Always something to keep in mind, but it's still good nonetheless. Next up, I'm playing a copy of Mage Power and a copy of Moon Mirror Shield. These are in here. One of the biggest problems I had with this deck style is that since this was less rank 4 oriented, sometimes it's easy to get walled by a monster if your opponent catches on to what you're doing. They just want to set a monster that you can't get over, not proc your cards, maybe force you into deck out. Well, these are just 2 cards that can help remedy that situation. We're playing lots of spells and traps in this deck, so Mage Power giving 500 attack for every spell and trap card I control will give our monster a lot of attack, and of course Moon Mirror Shield is an equipped card that means our monster will always win by battle by at least 100, and also is recyclable. So, I'm just playing 1 of each. Test out which one I like more. I think in this build, Moon Mirror Shield may be worth just playing 2 of it over. But sometimes Mage Power is nice because Mage Power has the flexibility that if their life points are open, you can have a really high attack monster to end the game quickly. So, kind of a battle to choose which one I like the most there. And then lastly, I'm playing 1 copy of Supply Squad. This is a card that I was kind of into throwing into this deck just so that if I got a card, I can easily generate a lot more cards after the first Supply Squad activation, because any future Supply Squad activations are just replenishing more than itself. And of course, since the hands all float into other monsters, it feels good to be able to draw a card off of it too, since I want my cards destroyed. Definitely a fun card to play in any decks that you enjoy destroying your own cards, like it's something you want to do. So just 1 copy to keep things moving. Not necessary, but I do like how it feels once it's on board. And that is it for the spell cards. Quick addition to the spell lineup. 1 card that I'm playing here is a copy of Card of Demise. Card of Demise is nice because if I don't special summon on a turn, I can instead draw until I have up to 3 cards in my hand. And now, of course, they don't take any more battle damage for the rest of this turn either, which isn't a big deal. And at the end phase, I have to discard my hand, which also is not a big deal because we're playing lots of spells and traps that can be set. We don't mind discarding excess copies of Thunderhand. Just a pretty good card to have. Now that is it for the spell cards. Next up, going into our trap lineup, I am playing 3 copies of There Can Be Only One. There Can Be Only One is a really powerful continuous trap card that says each player can only control 1 type of each monster. If a player has more than 1 monster of a certain type, they must send monsters to the grave until they control only 1 monster of each type. Pretty cool card because this card will win you so many matchups in lots of decks and archetypes where all monsters are the same type, so now they can't play multiple monsters. And of course, our monsters are a variety of different types, so we're not hindered too much. Fire Hand is a Pyro, Ice Hand is an Aqua, Thunder Hand is a Thunder, and Traptrix Murmillo is an Insect, so plenty of different types so that we can still have multiple monsters on the field. And of course, given that most of this is just one hand floating into another hand, and there's only not too many monsters on the field anyway, um, it plays out pretty nicely, especially since it will just win so many games, which is pretty cool. Very powerful trap card, and definitely makes this stun trap card version of the deck work a lot better. The other big trap card that wins us lots of games is 3 copies of Skill Drain. Skill Drain, continuous trap card. We pay 1,000 life points and then negate the effects of all monsters on the field while they're on the field, which is pretty cool. Our fire and ice hands, of course, trigger when they are sent to the grave, so that does not stop them. And Thunderhand is also not negated by Skill Drain because it has the "and if you do" text, which means when you're summoning this card from your hand or grave, even though it's on the field, once it destroys a card, it still gets to destroy a card, because the "and if you do" means that it triggers at the same time as the effect that summons it. So pretty cool. So Skill Drain only negates our Myrmelio, which is fine, not a big deal, especially when negating our opponent's monster effects is going to be huge and win us a ton of games. And, for that reason, Skill Drain at 3. It's a must play while we have it. Next is 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is a great trap card that just says pay half our life points to negate a summon or a spell or trap card. Pretty cool. Just whatever we need it for. Solemn Judgment is ready. We mostly want this card to protect our opponent trying to out either there can be only one or Skill Drain, since these cards will be carrying and doing most of the work. Solemn Judgment is just our answer to their answer, and that makes it very powerful. Definitely one of the things I think about the current situation of these powerful floodgates is having 3 Solemn Judgment really makes them a lot more powerful. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike, we pay 1,500 life points to negate a special summon or a monster's effect that's activating and destroy the card. Pretty cool, pretty flexible card. Maybe that and Solemn gets us paying a lot of life points, but usually not a big deal. We're usually not resolving all of them, and it's nice to have. Next up, I have 2 copies of Lost Wind. Lost Wind is pretty sweet. We target a face-up special summon monster on the field, negate its effects, and also its original attack is halved, which is pretty nice. Negating effects is always powerful, and we like the halving of the original attack effect, given that our monsters don't go over 1,600 attack normally, so it can be pretty easy to get pushed out by high attack monsters. And of course, if this card is in our graveyard when our opponent summons a monster from their extra deck, we can set it again but banish it when it leaves the field, which is pretty cool. I like that recursion, and it's good in this deck. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Waking the Dragon. We are playing a lot of trap cards, a lot of back row. It's going to look very tempting to hit us with the Harpy's Feather Duster, so we want to punish them when they do that. If this set card in its owner's control is removed from the field because of an opponent's card effect and is now in the graveyard or banished, special summon a monster from our deck or extra deck, and we are going to pack our extra deck with powerful win cons to summon off of that. Next, we're playing our 2 trap hole cards for Myrmelio to search. 1 copy of Bottomless. It simply just destroys a monster with 1,500 or more attack and banishes it when it be summoned. Pretty cool. And of course, Gravedigger's Trap Hole. Really powerful trap hole card right now. When your opponent activates a monster effect in their hand or in the graveyard, or when your opponent banishes a banished monster effect is activated, negate its effect, and if you do, inflict 2,000 damage to your opponent. So 2,000 damage, pretty big, and of course this card has the ability to negate hand traps, negate, graveyard activations, all things that are incredibly common in Yu-Gi-Oh! So it is pretty nice to just get one of these cards for free off of normal summoning Myrmelio and having it ready to go. Next up, I am playing 1 copy of Back to the Front. This is a card I like here and one of. We can use it to summon Myrmelio and get its special summon effect, but also we can summon a hand from our grave to be able to use its effect to either destroy a monster, force our opponent to deal with it, destroy a monster, and then float into one of the other hands. And so that capability, it's a nice card to have at 1. And then of course my last card, I'm playing 1 copy of Jar of Avarice. Jar of Avarice is pretty nice. You know, when you have the hands and you're cycling from Fire Hand to Ice Hand and then back to Fire Hand, it's easy to get all those cards burned out of the deck real easy. Well, Jar of Avarice gives us a nice reload. Now, of course, you could, a lot of hand builds do play Pot of Avarice, but given that Pot of Avarice is a spell card and we're playing Extravagance, and Extravagance doesn't let us draw other cards, it kind of has some synergy, and I also like that Jar of Avarice can just shuffle any card from the deck, from the graveyard back into the deck. So if you don't have all 5 monsters ready to go yet, especially in this deck where you have low monster count, it's nice to be able to fluff that up with some of the good spells and trap cards you'd like to see again. And so it's a pretty cool card. I've always been a huge fan of this artwork and whatnot, so I was very glad to be able to have it. And of course, this being a trap card means we can play it on our opponent's turn, so we can catch them off guard when they attack your hand. If they think all your other hands are played out, well, you can just reload them back real quick, and then your opponent's going to walk into it. And of course, being able to play it on our opponent's turn means we can use this and then get Extravagance on a future turn, etc. And that is it for the main deck. Alright, given our extra deck, I have dedicated my entire extra deck to the Waking the Dragon package. You can play some rank 4 XZs in here, but in this stun style build, you're not getting them out too often, and with skill drain, they're not even going to be too useful. So I'm just going all in. My Waking the Dragon targets, of course, are 3 copies of Last Warrior from Another Planet. This card just destroys all monsters you control, but then neither player can summon monsters. Pretty cool. If Waking the Dragon gets popped and they don't have any monsters on board, well, you just summon this guy. Now they can't summon anything. All they can do is set until you poke them down, which is pretty cool. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Naturia Exterio. Very powerful card for cards that are really reliant on their spell and trap cards. Essentially, if you have a card in your graveyard, you can infinitely negate spells and trap cards. All you have to do is banish a card from the graveyard and then send your top card of the deck to the graveyard. If you do, you can negate any spell or trap card that is activated. Pretty cool. Not once per turn. Quick effects. Just a really great card to win certain matchups. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon is a 3,500 attack monster that is unaffected by card effects. Makes it very hard to out. They either have to beat it by battle or kaiju it. Just a very limited ways to answer this, and some decks just can't, and so this card will win you the game because it is a menace to deal with. Next, I have 3 copies of Yugioh Mathmech Final Sigma. 3,000 attack monster that's unaffected by other card effects other than Mathmech cards, as long as they're in our extra monster zone. That's fine. That's where we'll put it. We don't need anything else to be there. And of course, you know, it only has 3,000 attack, so 500 less than Ultimate Falcon. So usually you only summon it if all your Ultimate Falcons are gone off of Extravagance. But it does have a bonus effect that is pretty nice, which is if you attack a opponent's monster and it does battle damage, that battle damage is doubled, which is pretty cool. And last, I am playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. 4,500 attack monster that cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Not as good as being unaffected, but sometimes good enough. And in exchange, you get 1,000 more attack than Ultimate Falcon, which is awesome. And Alternative Ultimate Dragon can also decide not to attack for a turn and decide pop a card with its effect. And that versatility is pretty nice, enough that it warrants a slot for you to go into at the right matchup. And that is the Waking the Dragon extra deck. All cards are maxed out at 3 copies, so that I always have something to summon even after Extravagance plays. So that is it for the hand deck profile. Let me know what you think. Very much enjoy being able to have this deck for pickup play. Very cool. It's a different way to use the hands, and I like that. I like their synergy with There Can Only Be One and skill drain quite a bit. And it is pretty cool. Let me know what you think, what you're doing with hands. Are you playing the traditional hands with artifacts and trap tricks, or have you done something else new with the hands? I'd be curious to see what folks are doing with these cards because they're pretty cool. But that's it for me. I'll catch you all in the next one.